before. And we're going to get started. So thanks for being here, everybody. I'm so excited about today's webinar. I'm Danny Glazer. I'm one of the program directors of the Green Business Partnership. And as you heard, my partner, Scott Burnquist, is on the call today as well. So for those of you who don't know us, the Green Business Partnership is a 501c3 nonprofit organization in our 11th year. We're a membership and green business certification program with 154 members, of which 60 have achieved certification. And we're grateful to our many sponsors, and hopefully you can see them on the screen, for their ongoing support of our work. So our mission is to engage, educate, and empower organizational leaders and staff to accelerate sustainable business. The GBP program creates the foundation for systemic change within an organization. Leaders invite all staff to participate in the organization's green transformation, welcoming them to the green team, and championing systems where everyone learns to do their job in the most sustainable manner. Trainings teach how to reduce resource waste and maximize efficiency in the 7 key areas that define a sustainable organization: organizational commitment, energy, transportation, land use, water, and materials management, which we break into 2 parts: waste and recycling, and green purchasing, which is also the focus of today's webinar. So in order to become certified, GBP members are required to examine their organization's waste stream, including the volume of waste, the cost of waste removal, and develop a plan to reduce waste, recycle the balance. The green purchasing module requires the review of current purchasing practices to determine what items can be eliminated or reduced, and to switch to non-toxic, eco-friendly products. Today, we have an incredible opportunity to take a deeper dive into materials management by learning about zero waste and the true TRUE, all caps, whole systems approach. We are delighted to welcome Celeste McMickle, Director of the True Zero Waste Certification Program, to discuss the concept of zero waste and how your organization can adopt these best practices. And as we know, it's not just your organization, as many of us are at home. So I'm really hoping that what we learned today is also going to be meaningful to us in our lives. So now I'm gonna switch my screen sharing off. And Celeste, are you able to grab the screen?
Yes, I am. Just going to go ahead and do this. Need to swap that. Okay, great. Hopefully everyone can see that. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. So thank you, Danny, and thank you everyone at GBP for having me here today. It's great to be here with all of you virtually, and looking forward to a time when we can all come together in person again. So as Danny said, my name is Celeste, and I'm a director for True Certification with the USGBC and GBCI. Many of you are likely familiar with our organization, primarily due to LEED certification, which is developed and administered by USGBC and GBCI. What you may not be aware of is that in addition to LEED, we have a number of other certification programs that address different facets of sustainability, and of which today we're going to be talking about True Certification. So just a little background on me real quick, and then we'll jump in. I have a background in architecture. I've worked as a sustainability consultant in the building industry for about 15 years now. I've done a lot of LEED consulting and other sustainability consulting, and then I've been focusing on waste and resource management for about the last 5 to 7 years. It's a really exciting industry to be a part of right now, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with all of you today. I'll run through my slides as quickly as possible so that we have some time for questions. I'll try and cut myself off at about 1/4 to give us 15 minutes. And Danny, if I'm running over, if you just want to give me a little wave or something, then that's fine.
Okay.
So So that said, let's talk a little bit. Some of you are likely aware of, the issue with waste that we're dealing with on a global basis right now, particularly with plastic pollution, but just in general, landfills and other issues related to ocean plastics. It's a real concern right now, and we just don't really have a system that is properly and efficiently managing all our waste, and it's really increasing in scale and impact from a human health perspective and as well as an environmental perspective. Of course, we kind of live in this society right now that really focuses on this, tenet of convenience. And I think this has been particularly heightened, unfortunately, during this recent COVID epidemic, with getting a lot of to-go food, and of course PPE, which is very important, but the management of these materials has been really challenging, especially recently. So we can definitely talk a little bit about some of the solutions and ideas with that as well. And then on just kind of a climate change platform, not everyone necessarily associates waste with the climate change conversation, but if you think about it, where all our waste goes is into landfills, which is where methane is produced, and methane is one of the top greenhouse gases. So it actually does really tie into that carbon and climate change conversation as well. So it's a real problem, and we really need to think about what we can do with it. Of course, we have recycling, and I promise this entire presentation isn't going to be a downer, but I do just want to kind of present some of the current statistics about where we're at. So recycling is very important, but at the same time, as you can see from this diagram, we've been increasing the amount of material that we're sending to recycling centers, but that's not really reducing the amount that we're sending to landfills. And so we really need to find a way where we're able to balance what we're sending to recycling in such a way that it reduces the amount that is going to landfills and the amount that we're producing overall. And the reality is that we're just sending more and more materials to recycling because we don't really have great other options for them. So this is just to paint a picture that, although we do have some systems in place, and I would definitely argue that recycling is an important piece of the puzzle, it's not really the only thing we can do. So if I'm presenting all this information about, what all these issues are and what the challenges are, where is the moment when we start to actually do something about it, right? And there is an onus on the consumer, on the individual to take action and to make a difference. But at the same time, I think what we're seeing a need for and a pressure for is for organizations and companies to really take a stand and make a difference in this too. I think there is a desire from the consumer angle for companies to take leadership with this regard when it comes to environmental stewardship and leadership in general. And then at the same time, it's a really challenging situation to put the consumer in, to be the only one that is dealing with the waste and recycling, and to not have better systems in place that support our individual efforts. That's a real challenge. And then to compound that, one of the other reasons why I think really having action coming from the perspective of a company, of a corporation, is that when a material actually gets to you, to your shopping bag, to your home, what you don't see is all the material that went into the process of actually making that material, which is a huge component of it. And this is where organizations, companies, and corporations can really make a huge difference, is by actually addressing all of those issues that come to that material before it actually ends up with you. So lay that groundwork real quick. So what is zero waste? Zero waste is a term that I think is meant to address a lot of these issues. And it's something that has become quite trendy recently. It's something that, you see people living zero waste lifestyles or throwing that term out a lot. But there's not necessarily always a lot of clear communication about what that means. So the US GBC and GBCI has always sort of come to the industry from the perspective of creating solutions for challenges, right? And that's what we really did with LEED certification back in the 90s, when there was a lot of discussion about green building, energy efficiency, but no real clear definition about what that was or how to actually quantify the implementation of these strategies. So when we're talking about zero waste, I think we're very much kind of in a similar place within this industry of where the building industry was, 20, 30 years ago, is that a lot of people want to implement zero waste practices, but there aren't necessarily that many great tools for exactly how to get there. So that's something that the US GBC and GBCI has taken on as a challenge, and that's how true certification was developed. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the zero waste hierarchy of highest and best uses, which is a very important tenet of zero waste. So this upside down triangle has several different iterations that maybe some of you have seen. But essentially, this one in particular was developed by the Zero Waste International Alliance, ZWIA, and it's really become an important reference point for the zero waste movement overall, and especially for true certification for the program that I work for. So what this is trying to communicate is that they're in similar ways to the food triangle, right? This is really discussing the different environmental issues that go into the use of different materials and their preference in terms of how they can be used the most efficiently. So starting at the top, you have things like redesign, reduce, and return. Then reuse, repair, and manufacture, recycle and compost, and then landfill, incineration, and the environment. So when I was in school, we always talked about the 3 R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Now as a society, we've gotten kind of focused on that recycle piece. And I really think that, again, that ties into just this convenience factor. And so reduce and reuse and other solutions like that get kind of left off the table. The other thing that I want to just touch on is the fact that the top 2 tiers in here, so like the redesign, reduce, and return, reuse, repair, and remanufacture, those are strategies that within the industry we talk about as being upstream solutions. So those are decisions and choices and strategies that can be implemented before the material reaches the end of its useful life. When you get into recycling and composting, and then of course landfill and incineration, those are called downstream choices. So those are decisions, those are options that you have once the material has reached the end, the most useful end of its life. And those are typically things that you don't necessarily have control over, right? So both as an individual and as a corporation, really the most opportunity for change really comes in the top 2 tiers of this zero waste hierarchy of the highest and best use, because those are where you have more control. Those are where your operations, your purchasing choices, your decisions can actually have the most impact. Once something is sent to recycling or composting or landfill, unfortunately, we don't necessarily really have control or awareness of what always happens with those, because regionally, there's just a lot of variance in how these materials are treated. There's, situational challenges that might come up with some of those materials. But again, this is where the majority of the focus often lies, is with the downstream. So when we're talking with projects and facilities about their zero waste solutions, there's often a tendency to really focus on like the recycling bin. And that's great. Again, recycling is important, but it's not the only thing, right? There's all these other decisions that can be made that actually are more preferential to these downstream solutions. So when we were developing true certification and really looking at how we wanted to implement our choices, we wanted to focus on this idea of the zero waste hierarchy, again, because that's really where the most opportunity is, and that's really where organizations can be the most empowered as well. So just also very quickly, I wanted to touch on this term, circular economy, just because it may or may not come up. But right now we typically fall under what's thought of as the linear economy, where we take materials from the earth, we make them into products, we use them, we dispose them, and then their disposal turns into pollution. So what we're really trying to work with here with the circular economy, and this is where recycling comes into it, but also things like remanufacturing and repairing, is more circular opportunities where we're making materials, we're using them, then we're reusing them and then making them into other materials. It's also worth noting that the recycling industry is a huge job creator. And so really, if we're refocusing on this idea of the circular economy, then it's actually a huge job creator as well. So I just wanted to set the stage for the background on zero waste principles. And now let's talk a little bit about true certification. So TRUE is a zero waste certification program that aims to really transform the way that businesses manage their resources. That's really the key thing, is that we're trying to help businesses figure out how to better manage their resources. And the goal of all our projects is to divert all solid waste from the landfill, and that also includes incineration, waste to energy, and the environment. The minimum threshold for participating in True is 90%, but the goal, of course, is to get to 100. So how does True work? So what we've done is we've taken the idea of the zero waste hierarchy and we've turned that into a certification program. And we really aligned all of the design of the program so that it incorporates all of these different strategies, which of course also are, you know, recycling and composting, but include things like the redesign, reduce, return, reuse, repair, remanufacture, which is more unusual because those are not usually the strategies that companies and individuals are looking at when they're figuring out how to be more sustainable and reduce their waste. So an example of that I think would be helpful is, this is one of our projects. This is Toyota. Of course, everyone knows Toyota. And what Toyota did was they redesigned their shipping containers so that they moved from a cardboard recycling program where they would, you know, package things up in cardboard, send it out to the next facility, and then that cardboard would be recycled, and then they would start the process over. Pretty normal, right? And also sounds great, like they're recycling all this cardboard. But when they started to work with the True principles, they realized what they could do is redesign their packaging so it was in a reusable and a returnable shipping container. And that has allowed them not only to make a huge impact on the environment, but they've also been able to save over $1 billion. So this is really where the power of True comes in, and not just True, but resource management, right? That's really what we're talking about when we're thinking about resource management. If things are ending up in your recycling bin or in your trash bin, you are typically literally going to be throwing dollars away because you're going to be paying for the hauling of those services. So if you can find a way to redesign your materials, to reduce your materials, to find some of these other upstream strategies, then that's going to have a huge impact on your pocketbook as well as your overall environmental success, which is huge. Whoops, I missed one. So True is really meant to bring all this together. It's there to really help organizations and companies be leaders in the environmental movement. It also gives a clear pathway for how to get to zero waste, along with a verification that it's actually happened, right? Getting back to that conversation about LEED certification and talking about how to incorporate environmental strategies without really having any way to prove that you're doing it. This is a way to really showcase that effort and showcase that verification. It has a huge impact, as we've talked about, kind of all these things related to the challenges within the waste industry. It's really there to support all of these different ways that a company and an organization can address these challenges and make a really big difference. We are designed to follow a similar platform of LEED certification in that we follow certified silver, gold, and platinum with different points lining up with the different certification tiers. This is an overview of the categories and points. I'm not going to spend too much time on each individual one, but I will highlight a couple of things. So as you can see on the left, top left, you know, we've really designed this so that it focuses again on a lot of those upstream solutions, and that's really where the big points are located. So redesign, reduce, reuse. Also composting, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and it's meant to be a holistic approach to zero waste. So we're really looking at the whole picture here, not just looking at the results of what's going out to your recycling bin. Also on the bottom left, you can see zero waste purchasing is worth 9 points. That's actually the most points within one category. And that's really because we've seen time and time again that those purchasing decisions are where some of the biggest impacts can be, both from a resource management perspective, but also from a cost savings perspective. So it's really those operations that are going to really have a huge impact on the project's overall savings. Also, I'll just highlight on the top right, we have sections devoted to leadership and training, which is also we consider to be a really important part of the program. Zero waste, we talk about as being like a team sport, and it's really important to have everyone on board, all the way from leadership down to, you know, a part-time intern or something like that. You know, it's really, you want everyone to be on board with the process and understanding how to support one another. I've talked about this a little bit, but, you know, again, just kind of like understanding the way we approach the program, that we really do look at waste prevention as the primary tenet of the program. We definitely address things like recycling, composting, and diversion, but we really refocus things to have an impact on the upstream. this is just a quick little overview of what it looks like within, within the rating system, which I can definitely send out to everyone if you're interested in checking it out, just so you can kind of see, you know, the overview of all the different credits, how we write out the credit with intent, requirement, and strategies. And it's really just meant to be a support system to help in a journey to zero waste. All facilities are pretty much eligible for certification. We have everything from, I'm located physically in Brooklyn. We have like a small little 1,500 square foot restaurant in New York City that was just certified, you know, all the way up to like, we saw the, you know, Toyota example, but, you know, also different parts of Disney are certified, and these huge facilities, Microsoft campus, and just a really wide range of projects that are going through the process. We currently have just shy of 200 certifications. We are a global program in 12 different countries. We're really excited about the growth of the program and where it's going. This is just kind of an overview of the different kinds of projects that we have. And as you can see, again, it's a lot of different types of projects that are coming on board. You know, everything from stores to manufacturing facilities to businesses. It's really, you know, we have breweries and wineries. It's really exciting to see all of the different ways that different projects are approaching this. One other thing that I really wanted to share with you is that we have a professional certificate called the True Advisor. And this is similar to the idea of a lead AP in that it is a professional training that one would go through. This, in this case, it's an online module program where you actually get a training program as part of the certificate. And at the end of the modules, there's an exam that you take, and passing the exam yields the credential of the True Advisor. Again, we're just shy of about 1,000 True Advisors right now, also globally. And this can be everything from, we have students, we have professionals, you know, the True Advisors play a really big role in the projects of helping to support True certification, because they're there alongside the facility that's going to be going through the process, either from an internal perspective or as an outside consultant to really help walk the project through the process. And, you know, working with trash is really fun. I've been, like I said, doing it for about 5 to 7 years now. And it's a really engaging work to be doing. It really involves everyone from an organization. There's a lot of personal initiative involved. And I think it's a really great way to bring people together. So I think we still have a little bit of time. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about a couple of different zero waste strategies, just to provide a little bit more context for how this works. So many of you may have heard of the idea of a waste audit, but what I just want to expand upon is that there's a little bit of a difference between a waste audit and a zero waste audit, right? So a waste audit is this idea of looking at all the materials that you've collected at a facility or at your home, wherever that might be, and figuring out where they should go, right? Is there contamination? Where do these materials belong? A zero waste audit is really about looking at whether or not those materials need to be there in the first place. So it's identifying, you know, if there's a lot of waste from coffee cups, is that an opportunity to just reduce coffee cups from the purchasing program and to put in a more reusable model instead, just as a very simple example? Or things like paper, if there's a lot of paper being used, is there an opportunity for the office to go paperless or something like that? So there's a really key difference in that approach. The idea of looking where something should be versus looking at whether or not it should be there at all. And just kind of, again, that idea that the waste audit is going to kind of start at the end of the process and the zero waste audit is going to start at the beginning. The other thing I wanted to show you, I know this is tiny, and I'm happy to send this out after the fact so everyone can look at it and zoom in to see this a little bit more, but this is a waste diversion calculator. And what I talked about at the beginning was that there's typically a focus in looking just at the downstream diversion of what the recycling rates are versus landfill rates. So this is an example of one of our diversion calculators where I don't know if you can see that, but there's different categories that address reuse, reduce, remanufacture, all those things. So we actually encourage our facilities and our clients to include all of their upstream strategies in their diversion rate. So let's say somebody came to us with a diversion rate of 30%, but they had only been looking, which is pretty typical, I would say, as far as recycling goes, at least in the Northeast. That's pretty common. So if somebody came to us with a recycling diversion rate of 30%, and they were like, there's no way we're going to be able to get to 90 or 95 or 100% diversion. It's just impossible. What we would say is, well, have you included your upstream strategies in that, right? Have you looked at reduce? You looked at reuse? Have you looked at some of these other ways that where your materials are going and how they're being managed? And once you do that, you're actually able to include those choices and those strategies back into your diversion calculator, and that very quickly will often bump that diversion rate quite a bit up. So when projects say like, oh, I don't think I can get there, I always encourage them to try and see if they, go through the process of looking at points and looking at what choices they could change in their operations. You might be closer than you think. And that really goes along with the idea of kind of analyzing where an organization is at, right? Like, are you just at the point of doing those collections, or have you really moved to the point of integrating all of these environmental choices and resource management choices into the way the organization is run, where you're really at that point of environmental stewardship, everyone is on board, but you really move beyond that idea of just, does something go in a recycling bin or not, and really including it in the conversation of like, why do we even have these materials here, and is there a way to just actually eliminate them? So a little bit about what we do here at the USGBC and GBCI is that we really try and do as much as we can to support the work of all of our clients that are going through the process. We do a lot of education and training. So an example like this today, the USGBC is a nonprofit. And so that's a big part of what we do, is really trying to support the work of our clients, but also do a lot of that education and training to just try and promote these environmental stewardship practices. So we do a lot of webinars, we do a lot of different articles and resources that are available. When we were allowed to, we were doing a lot more workshops and things like that. Those have mostly moved to a virtual platform at this point, but of course we hope to start up again. And then we also just wanted to highlight a couple of our projects that we're really excited about. I mentioned a brewery. So we have Sierra Nevada was actually our first project. They're True Platinum. They do amazing things both within the brewery, and then they have a restaurant that goes along with it. So of course, with a brewery, they have a ton of organic material that comes out of the process of making beer. And they have some really exciting stuff that they've done with composting and diversion related to that, in addition to a lot of other upstream choices and renewable energy and that kind of thing. Our most recent project was the Soldiers Memorial Military Museum in St. Louis. And this is really exciting because, of course, a museum is something that interfaces with the public, which is a way that, can be really challenging to work with waste. So it's really amazing the things that they've done related to working with the public and creating signage and ways to showcase what they're doing and why resource management is important. Postie Cards is a small printing press that's also in Missouri, actually, and they are the first printing press to reach True Platinum. And again, it's just really exciting to see a project that deals so much with resources, right? Like they're dealing with paper, to be able to get to the point of reducing their waste all the way above 90% threshold. We have the hospitality, a casino. I mentioned also related to hospitality, this is Westbourne, which is local here in New York. And again, this is a really exciting project. It's tiny, it's 1,500 square feet, and they've just done an incredible job with integrating zero waste practices into their work from the very beginning. And then to get that verified through True has been a really great accomplishment. We also have an events certification, which I realize is not really on everybody's mind right now, but we have had Greenbuild and Microsoft go through our event certification and become certified a couple years in a row now. And that's something that we really hope to see more of, because of course events are somewhat notoriously really wasteful industries. And so we're really looking forward to having an impact there and really reducing the waste that's associated with these like one-time events. And then I won't spend too much time on this, but we are really excited that we are about to launch, or in the process of launching, something called pre-certification, which is going to be a program that's available to projects that have made a commitment to getting to zero waste, but just aren't quite at the point of being able to get to 90% yet. So it's kind of a way to like make a commitment to being on the path and doing certain things like the waste audit to move in that direction. But still receive recognition for that effort. So we actually have a webinar coming up on July 22nd related to pre-certification, and it would be great if you wanted to join us for that as well. And then for any projects that are interested in sort of the connection between LEED and True, we do have a lot of overlap. We have a new offering called LEED Zero, which addresses net zero energy, water, and waste, and receiving True Platinum certification is a piece of that. And then we also have a lot of overlap between LEED EV and True, of course, because LEED EV deals with facility operations, as does True, and True kind of really just takes that to the next level. But there's a lot of synergies between those with how the credits line up and where the crossover is. So again, I think I actually even finished a little bit early, which should give us plenty of time for questions. But I really just want you to come away with this idea that, again, when you're looking at your own personal decisions related to waste, or if you're coming at it from the perspective of a company, again, as much as you can go beyond this idea of just recycling to think about these other ways that you can make an impact, choices that can be made before the material is even used in the first place. That's really the best place to start, and that's really, you know, how we want to help you on your journey. So that's it for me.
That was awesome. So there's not it for you because there's a million questions.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, that happened.
I'm gonna start. Okay.
Okay,
So
I'll
here
stop
we
sharing
go.
my screen here.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to put everybody on my screen so I can see everybody. Okay, this is from Cassandra. True advisors, are they employed by companies? How do you become an advisor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they can be employed by companies, but that's certainly not a requirement by any means. We have lots of different kinds of people that go through the True Advisor, everyone from students to consultants to internal sustainability staff or purchasing agents. And really, you know, it kind of depends on the company if they want to, if they're interested in pursuing True certification and they want to hire an outside consultant to fill that role, we see that. Or if there's a person internal, then, you know, that individual or several individuals might go through the True Advisor, and it's pretty cheap. It's, you know, it's a couple $100 for a company. It's like not really a big deal. And to go through the process that way. And so basically it's an online on-demand module, and you just sign up for it. And then you can go through. I think it's a great, you know, it's actually how I got involved with True. Is I was doing waste consulting, and I wanted that to be something that I could offer to my clients. And so I came on and did the True Advisor and worked with some projects that way, and then ended up working for True in the end. But yeah, I think it really depends what your role is, and or maybe what you want your role to be and how that might fit into it. But it certainly does not have to be someone internal to an organization.
Okay. So Paranita Singh, in regards to Toyota switching over to reusable containers, I was curious, did using reusable containers increase their transportation costs and cause an increase in the use of fossil fuels? Is it still cheaper if you take into account the entire process?
So it's a really good question. I don't necessarily have specific data on that for Toyota, but I have done a lot of research on just the difference between like a slightly heavier reusable model versus disposable models. And from kind of like a carbon greenhouse gas perspective, it's still pretty much always going to be more eco-friendly to use the reusable model. It's kind of like there's a tipping point where like the first like 1 or 2 uses, the reusable might have more of an impact related to transportation and things like that. Or it's like about equal. But once you get to like the 3+ uses of a reusable material, it's pretty much always going to blow the single use out of the water in terms of impact. because there's so much that goes into the production of the material, like a cardboard box. There's so much that goes into the production of a cardboard box, right? Whether it's made with virgin paper or recycled paper, either way, there's going to be huge impacts with that. And then the transportation of getting that material to the facility where it's going and then sending it away, being remade into something, you know, it adds up. So I don't know specifically for Toyota, but in general, you can pretty much always assume that if you're using something more than twice, it's always going to have a significantly better environmental impact.
Okay. So Jillian has a 6-part question.
Okay.
I might take this in bites. So the first one, are there any particular industries that seem to be on the leading edge of zero waste? I'm going to be one at a time.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think when we started, we had a lot of manufacturing projects, maybe just because of the nature of they were already sort of in a situation of assessing their different resources and how they were using them. And so we definitely had sort of a surge of manufacturing, but now we were starting to see a lot of offices. That was a big one. That's changed a little bit with the current COVID situation, but I think offices and commercial buildings were really kind of like starting to move up in that direction as they sort of like look at how to manage their waste. But it's really, I mean, what I kind of showed is a variety of different kinds of projects. It's a really big spectrum. You know, we have a lot of higher education projects that are coming through the pipeline. Hospitality has been a big one. A lot of breweries and wineries. There's a pretty wide variety. So I don't know if there's one that I could really point to as being like significantly higher than another. I will just say that like when we started, we had more manufacturing at the beginning, but it's kind of evened out now.
So speaking of manufacturing, what are some of the largest, most significant sources of waste in manufacturing? Jillian is seeing a lot more waste on the employee side than on the production side.
Sure, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think that is often going to be the situation. I think employees contribute to a lot of waste. You know, I think from manufacturing, I don't personally work in manufacturing, but I have visited a lot of facilities. And I think it just depends so much facility to facility. Pallet use is a really big one that I think doesn't always get considered though, because it might not actually be the product that's being manufactured, but it's a huge piece of the process for that material. And so pallet waste is a huge problem. And one of the things that we actually have in the program is a specific credit that deals with pallet waste. And we see really cool ways of addressing it, you know, from more like reusable pallet options that are made of like some sort of like MDF type fiber, to crunching them up into mulch and things like that. But I think that's a big one that's pervasive regardless of what the facility is making.
Okay. So Jillian, I'm going to skip to the next person and then get back to your questions if you don't mind. But one of Jillian's last questions was, would it be possible to have your slides? So just so you know, this recording is going to be posted on our page, and then I will actually get the PowerPoint from Celeste so that we'll post those on our page as well in a PDF. Okay, so moving on to Estefania Molina. Hi, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. In order to earn the true zero waste certification, the program tell us that there are 7 minimum requirements. Specifically, there is a requirement that says, quote, the company must submit a case study of their zero waste initiatives. What kind of information is acceptable to submit in order to accomplish this requirement?
Yeah, it's a great question. You really got ahead of me there. I actually took that slide out because I thought it was too detailed, and I was like, I don't think they're going to want to see that. But I can include it in the new presentation that I send through Danny. But yeah, so we do have 7 prerequisites. The biggest one, which I did address, is that we have a minimum requirement of 90%. So in order to participate in the program, you know, projects need to be at 90% diversion unless you're going for pre-certification or something like that, which again does not have that requirement. But as far as the case study question, I mean, that's going to be very project specific. I mean, that's really in there as a requirement because we want to help our facilities and our clients celebrate their successes. So we don't necessarily have that in there as like a penalty by any means. It's really meant so like you have a document that, you know, you can post in a newsletter that we can use to kind of showcase what you've done, the way I showcased some of the projects that we're really excited about that we have right now. So, you know, it's photos, it's information about, you know, different credits that you want to highlight because you feel like you did a really good job with them. But one of the things that I didn't really talk about is the certification process. So when projects come on board and they register and they want to move through, we have a whole certification team, and that certification team is amazing. They're incredibly knowledgeable, they're incredibly helpful, and they will really help shepherd your project through the process. If you have any questions on specific credits, requirements, what documentation is needed, they're there to help you. And also all that information is available in our rating system. So, I mean, I think the actual content might vary project to project, but we have a lot of resources and support to help all our projects through. And I think
there's definitely a lot of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the case study is usually something that projects are pretty excited about.
And I think that there's a lot of interest in the True Advisor. So I'm going to let people reach out to you afterwards, if you don't mind, about that. And I'll come back to them if we have time. One question is, how are companies certified versus how are individual sites certified? Is there a difference?
Okay. There is a difference. Yeah, no, thank you for that question. And maybe I misspoke a bit in the presentation. So that slide that I showed that had all the different companies on it, those are all clients that have done multi-site projects. So it's not necessarily the company that's certified, it's the fact that they have at least one, if not multiple sites certified. One of our largest clients, Colgate-Palmolive, they've made a commitment to certify all their projects. And so they will be essentially a true certified, they will have all their facilities will be certified. We wouldn't necessarily say they're a true certified company though.
Right.
It's the actual facilities that would be, and we usually make a distinction about like which facility has or hasn't been certified.
Got it. Is there a cost to become true certified?
Yes. We have for the facility certification, we have registration and certification fees. The registration fee is a set fee, and the certification fee is based on square footage.
And they're probably getting their money back by being reducing all their waste, right?
That's the thing. That's really where those savings come out. And so usually, like, there's more that comes back to you than you're actually paying for the certification.
Right. So Danielle is a graduate student, currently building a background in architecture and community planning. Danielle is curious as to how you moved from your personal architecture background and into a career towards helping business become zero waste. It's hard to know where to look when I'm not looking for the conventional path you would normally take with a degree in architecture and planning.
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm also happy to chat if there are questions where you want to learn more, like you can reach out to me individually and we can have like a more extended conversation. But I'll say, it wasn't necessarily easy, especially because this was like, I won't date myself, but it was many moons ago that I was making these choices. And so there were less opportunities in the sustainability world. But I did actually get involved with USGBC and become I became a lead AP. And that was really what put me on the pathway to working within the environmental world, because that was really a place where I think architects have a lot of opportunity to engage with the environment. And then from there, I was working in New York City as a sustainability consultant, and just the issue of trash, which is personally interesting to me, just kept coming up because I think, I don't know exactly how many people are located. I'm imagining a lot of us in the New York area. And it's just something that you see all the time, especially in Manhattan, right? There's just like piles of trash and piles of trash. And so it was particularly concerning to me. And coming at it from the lead perspective, I saw that was something that just most of my projects were struggling with, was actually meeting the waste and diversion requirements that they had to get to. They were like fine with energy, they were fine with materials, but they were just like always struggling with waste management. And so from my perspective, I just saw like, wow, this is something that's a real big issue that really needs to be looked at. And it just kind of happened to coincide with a lot of the discussion that was coming up related to like ocean plastics and single-use plastics. And it became a really big passion of mine, which is how I got on this track specifically.
Fantastic. Kind of a testimonial from Michael Matos, who is with Montefiore. He said, I recently earned my True Advisor credential. The course is highly recommended. So
Oh,
yeah, we've been
thank you so
working
much.
with Michael for many years, and they do a fantastic job over there with waste and energy. So that was great
Great.
to hear.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I had honestly the same experience when I went through the True Advisor. It was something that I wanted to learn more about. I was interested in working more in that world, and it really was such a great educational resource to actually learn about what zero waste really meant, and different strategies for how to, on a personal level and on a consulting basis, help my clients get there.
Excellent. Ashley, you listed composting as a solution with a larger amount of points. Since composting generates methane discussed earlier, why is that solution given a larger number of points?
Well, composting is an interesting one, right? Because composting, okay, so to back up, food waste, when it ends up in landfill, is kind of the main creator of methane. So in a landfill situation, food waste is a really big problem. However, when it's made in a compost facility, and there's two different kinds of composting facilities, there's anaerobic and aerobic. Aerobic is above ground or outdoors usually. It's with air, that's what it means, with air. And that typically is not going to create methane. That is literally just turning waste into a new resource, which is compost. When you have food scraps that are going through an anaerobic process, that would be without air, and that's typically going to be in like we have in where I am in Brooklyn, we have the Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant, and that is a big diverter of food waste, and that does create methane, but it is specifically channeled to work with National Grid here in New York to be something that can then be diverted for energy. So it's actually a very different process, because when it's released as methane in the landfill, it doesn't go anywhere, or it just goes out into like the ambient air or into the earth. But when we're managing it properly, it's not a problem. It actually is a better use of the material.
Great. So Julie, who is one of our wonderful members with the New York Milk Bank, breast milk bank, in case anyone doesn't know that. So she says, what do you do about a company that must use products and manufacturing that clients demand? For example, they tried to use glass bottles, but clients demanded plastic. We also use a silicone tubing that cannot be sterilized, and we have to discard it. We are so disappointed about this, but what can we do?
Yeah, that's a challenge. That's also a bit of a surprise. I feel like from a consumer basis, usually the preference is for glass, not plastic, actually. Like if you do, like there's been TerraCycle, for example, has done a lot of surveys about the different ways consumers respond to different materials in terms of enjoyment and joy. And like on the lowest scale is things like a little pouch to a plastic bottle. And on the higher scale is going to be aluminum and glass. So I am not super up to date in the world of the milk bank, but it sounds like an amazing project, but there might be something specific about that, why plastic is preferred. But I think overall there is a general real feeling from consumers that they want companies to have a more sustainable approach, and oftentimes communicating that through marketing, through, you know, how you're kind of like framing the business, I think can go a really long way. So, you know, making a stand and saying like, we are switching to glass bottles for reasons X, Y, and Z, and really just communicating that to your consumers, and maybe offering two different options even potentially. But I think that there is like a really usually positive response to environmental choices, or at least an understanding of why the choice was made.
Thank you. So Lil Berman, do you know of any utilities that have achieved zero waste?
Utilities.
So
I'm not exactly sure. If you mean like Con Edison or National Grid, I mean, again, what we would certify would be the actual facility. So right. If it was a facility that was making the electricity or that was producing the material, like the example that I gave of the wastewater treatment plant at Newtown Creek, that could actually be a great candidate for true certification. The utility itself wouldn't become true certified, but
Right.
the facility where the facility would. But I
Right.
don't know of any. No, I don't know of any.
Yeah, and which is very similar to our program. We
Right.
are certifying a facility as
Right.
well. Okay, thank you for a good overview of zero waste and true zero waste certification. Very helpful. Where can we see a list of companies and organizations that have achieved true zero waste certification?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't really talk about it too much, but our website has a lot of really good resources on it. So all of those webinars that I listed and workshop, those are all available on the website. Also, we have a resources page that has a lot of really helpful documents from our rating system to kind of like a one-pager, and they're all free and available. And then we also have a list of projects on there with their case studies. So that would actually also be a great place to go and look. They're a little bit shorter. We've like cut them down so that they, you know, fit a little bit better on the page, but that's a great place to go and look at how people have showcased their projects. But you can review, you know, there's a couple dozen on there. It's not comprehensive. We do have some like confidential projects, or some, you know, if one company has like, you know, 30 projects or something, they may have only showcased one. So it's not a comprehensive list, but there are a lot of good ones on there. And if you have questions about anything that isn't on that list, you can reach out to me and I can hopefully share it with you.
And from Elizabeth, can you explain a little more about diversion?
Sure. And in what sense, maybe? Can we clarify that?
Elizabeth, you can unmute yourself and clarify. Feel free.
I'm just not sure I understood it. I mean, I guess you're diverting what might become waste into some other thing. Is that just like the two upstream options? Is that what that means?
Okay, got it. Yeah, I think I can hopefully answer that. So, so again, there's like two different ways that we look at resource management. One of those would be an upstream solution, which is a choice that's made before that material reaches the end of its useful life. And I'll explain it a little bit more detail. Downstream is going to be like recycling or landfill. So an example of that would be a piece of paper. I'm just going to go very simple. So if you have a piece of paper that you printed something on it and then you're done with printing it, the downstream solution for that piece of paper would be putting it in the recycling bin. Because now it's going to go and be made to a downcycled product. It's going to go to a paper mill. They might make it into a pizza box or something like that. That's fine. But if you did something different with that piece of paper, like you cut it up and used it for little Post-it notes, for example, or if you shredded it and used it as bedding for a worm bin, for example, you're finding a different way to use that material before it goes to a downstream solution. The other option would be just eliminating its use altogether, right? Like the example I gave of a coffee cup. You know, if there's a bunch of coffee cups ending up in the recycling bin, like maybe those coffee cups just shouldn't be there to begin with. Does that help? Okay.
So I think that most of the questions, thank you for the speed round. It's really
it's
great.
Yeah, it was perfect timing too. I see we're just about at the hour. So I finished the presentation right on time.
Right on time. And I'm assuming that you will be accessible to people, that we can share your information. I think there's a tremendous amount of interest here.
That's great. Yeah, the last slide on the presentation has our generic email address on it, but I'll make sure, Danny, I mean, you have my direct email. I'll write a little follow-up and make sure that you have all of that so anyone can, you know, you can just reach out to me.
Yeah, because I'm going to send the recording. I mean, we're going to post a recording, but I will send an email to this list of everybody who registered to make sure that they know that it's up there. So
wonderful.
One more new message. Wait, who's still? Just a big thank you. Great presentation.
Oh, great.
Get a few of those.
Thanks everyone. You've been a very supportive audience. I really appreciate it. It's really, I'm assuming this is like a pretty local group. So it's always really nice to connect with fellow Northeasters, New Yorkers, wherever you might be. So,
And I think one of the nice things that, that I find, I mean, you found your passion here. And I think, I know many of the people who are on this Zoom call. And it's just great because so many people have done the same thing. It's like figured out a part of this sustainable work, that really, they feel very strongly about and are doing, are working toward. So I think that that's just really always a wonderful thing to see. So thank you
that's
so
great.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, my
Really
pleasure.
wonderful.
No, thanks to all of you for all your interest. I mean, I know it's kind of definitely a big topic for everyone, and I'll just maybe end on one note, which I think is cool, is that, you know, waste is something that does affect all of us because we all interact with it on a daily basis. And I don't think that's necessarily the case with like all aspects of sustainability. But I think it's really great to see how much interest there is, because I do think, you know, all of your individual action actually does make a huge impact. And so that can be really empowering, and it's always really empowering for me.
Definitely. Thanks, everybody. So we had a major storm through this entire, it just stopped. So I'm glad it didn't, the light stayed on. So it was really good.
Awesome.
So, all right. Have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. You too.
Good
Take
to
care.
see you all.